in Pakistan. Today is Friday, August 15th. And in this session, we will be discussing the regulatory institutions such as Security and Exchange Commission and Pakistan Stock Exchange and the steps that they have initiated in relation to the ESG compliance and adaptation. This webinar aims to provide a high-level, forward-looking platform for dialogue among key stakeholders working to shape the future of ESG disclosures in Pakistan. It also brings together voices from regulatory bodies, capital markets, the private sector, and civil society to share insights, clarify expectations, and strengthen pathways for transparency, accountability. In terms of the objectives that we would like to achieve out of this webinar is the examination of the current landscape of ESG and sustainability in Pakistan in conjunction with what the SCCP and Pakistan Stock Exchange are doing. Also exploring strategic implication for businesses. We would also highlight the businesses that have implemented ESG auditing and reporting, so on, and identifying institutional roles. So not only for those businesses who are implementing this, but also for the institutions, with their roles and responsibilities. The most important topic, which is very close to my heart in here, will be the discussion on barriers that affect the adaptation of ESG within Pakistan. So that is the key and the most important element in there. Now I would give you a brief introduction in terms of the panelists that we have today here with us. So what we have a very strong lineup in terms of the panelists and speakers that we have. So first of all, we have Ms. Musarrat Jabin, who is Commissioner, Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. Madam, welcome to this session. Then we have Mr. Mamoosh Khwaja, who is Managing Director for ILM Net. It is a sustainability advisory and advocacy business in Pakistan. Followed by that, we have Ms. Aisha Aziz, who is Group Manager Sustainability for Packages Limited. Madam, welcome to the session. And then we have Mr. Kashif Ali, who is the ED for Transparency International Pakistan. And followed by that is myself, Usman Masood. I am the I run a business based in UAE, and we are focused on ESG and sustainability. So welcome all the participants and the panelists. Thank you for joining this session. With that, and I will pass the floor to Ms. Musarrat Jabin, who is the Commissioner for Securities and Exchange Commission, who will give the opening remarks for this. Ms. Musarrat Jabin, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Usman. Just a bit of a correction before I begin. I'm an executive director with the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, yet to go for a commissioner's position, not yet. But I commend Transparency International and, of course, its partners, the ESG Nexus, for strengthening dialogue around sustainability. I think this is very, very important, considering that, the state of affairs that we are in Pakistan. So, as global sustainability standards and practices gain traction, we all agree with it. It is absolutely vital that Pakistani businesses not only comply, but also embrace transparency as a strategic driver of competitiveness and resilience and long-term value creation. And I do remember it was last year when Deloitte had published a survey covering more than, I would say, 1,000 assets owners, asset managers, investment advisors, etc. And it was across many, jurisdictions like North America, Europe, Asia. And the period was somewhere between January and December 2023. So one of the key findings or the results, I would say, of the survey were like about 79% of the global investors had reported having a sustainable investment policy in place. So the study asked basically, it had a list of basically three, I would say, drivers for embedding sustainability factors into their investment decision making. The most commonly cited reasons, amongst those were the regulatory requirements, which we understand, the regulatory interventions, etc. Also improved financial performance and stakeholders' influence. And the stakeholder influence was about 34% of, the requirements. So the message seems to be very, very clear from the survey that transparency is, in particular in ESG reporting, is no longer optional. It's absolutely foundational to securing capital, credibility, and competitive advantage. So, the question is as to why ESG transparency is taking center stage these days. It's because there are, requirements for access to capital. Investors and lenders increasingly require ESG data, transparent, consistent, and comparable, before actually they start committing, funds. So firms that report such data, such credible one, such consistent one, they enjoy smoother access to global financial challenge. And these challenges don't come easy, of course, they have to meet certain requirements. So supply chain and market access would be number two, that to me, I think, because multinationals are prioritizing suppliers with strong ESG disclosures. So those companies which are lacking transparency risk being left out of these lucrative markets. And also risk management. So, because clear reporting absolutely reduces the uncertainty, builds up the investor confidence, which often translates actually into, I would say, lower cost of capital and stronger valuations. So, and the last but not the least would be the reputation and resilience. So transparency definitely fosters trust among consumers, regulators, and, as such communities. So all of this is essential in in today's interconnected global economy. So in short, reporting isn't just a compliance exercise, it's strategic investment in your own company. It's no longer sustainable and growth oriented if you don't have ESG reporting as structured as any regulator would require it to be. So while there is global, momentum in adopting these cohesive reporting standards, I'm very, very pleased to share with you that, Pakistan is one of those very few countries now who's really shown leadership in this area. So most of you would probably already know that the International Sustainability Standards Board is rapidly actually setting up global baselines for sustainability reporting. Just as we have these S1s and S2s, that IFRS S1s and S2s. The one is basically a general sustainability disclosure, while S2, as you know, is climate related. And the SCCP has taken quite a few, essential steps in making, or introducing these standards into Pakistani financial markets. So last year in December 2024, we announced the phased adoption of IFRS S1 and S2 with effect from 1st of July 2025. It has already started for more larger companies as such. This places us amongst, I would say, probably the 17th, jurisdiction worldwide that is providing transparent progress towards aligning with global sustainability disclosure standards. Deloitte ki bhi ek exercise thi, which they had done last year, as I mentioned, in 2023. So I would say that, this is more than regulatory alignment. It is indicating that Pakistan is open for sustainable, globally competitive business. And this is the I would say the absolute requirement of the economy as well. But in the context of SCCP, since launching of the ESG regulatory roadmap in 2022, we've been building the infrastructure support, to support support this transformation. ESG disclosure guidelines came into introduction in 2024. As per global best practices, the ESG sustainable portal is live, and we have over 50 companies already onboarded and reporting on the ESG sustain portal. The ISSB adoption, which I just mentioned, in a phased manner. The first phase, as I said, has started from July 2025. It has certain thresholds for categorizing those companies. So companies with a turnover over 25 billion, or an employee size of 1,000, including an asset size of above 12.5, are in the first threshold. So those who do not fall in the first threshold will then go into 2026 reporting period, and then 2027. Yet another thing, actually, I would like to definitely highlight here is the green taxonomy's alignment, which the SCCP is moving alongside with the State Bank. We are aligning our ESG guidelines with the national climate targets for increasing access to green financing. And we are definitely also aware that robust ESG reporting cannot be achieved without the regulations and the regulatory framework, and then of course for companies to have the business case. But there are significant constraints across the sectors, and we must appreciate those also, like limited awareness of international reporting frameworks, or the capacity building side, the shortage of trained staff, the gaps in the international system for, in the internal data system for reporting and collection of data, and of course the verification aspect, which is the most critical one. So it is for all of these reasons that throughout 2023, we had partnered with ICAP to hold capacity building sessions for the regulated sectors and the professionals. And more recently in Islamabad, we started off with IFC under their ESG project, an exercise that basically focuses on sector-specific capacity building and strengthening ESG, sustain also the portal itself. So, and with the UN Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative, we have also delivered gender-specific, plans, and we have also made targets in-house also for the SCCP. But now coming to, the area as to what, should be focus of the corporates, as what you call, the corporate call of action. So this is more of a collective momentum throughout, the boards and executives must ensure, that they begin now at the right time, which is an early alignment with, the ISSB standards positions as you move ahead with the regulations and investor expectations. The second is the empowering, actually, the boards of the corporates. So making ESG part of strategic oversight and risk management, which is just not compliance. It's beyond. And the third one is definitely investing in your systems and skills, because that's basically building the in-house capacity, the staff, which is needed for high quality data and disclosures. So the SCCP, we focused on internal as well as regulated sector specific capacity building. And the fourth one coming to my mind would be the use of ESG Sustain, the online portal that I mentioned, basically to report the success stories and to report the data itself. The last and not the least one would be to engage and collaborate, to share best practices, to learn from peers, and to work with regulators to refine the overall reporting ecosystem. So I think this is time to move from compliance to strict competitive advantage as such. So transparent ESG reporting is, as I said earlier also, and I would like to re-emphasize, is no longer just a regulatory checkbox exercise, but it is the currency of trust in global markets. And SCCP has laid the regulatory foundation, and now it's for the corporate sector to convert that foundation into value. And I'm sure that webinars like these, with all the learned speakers today, will definitely further elaborate on the sustainability considerations. And I would like to just perhaps quickly conclude that by reiterating that we must shift collectively from compliance to competitiveness and position Pakistan as a leader in sustainable, transparent, and future-ready business. And we are all there. And I'm sure that a lot of is happening in silos, but there is very much a need to to knit together all of those efforts and work more like a team and collaborate amongst ourselves. So thank you very much again, and over to you, Usman.
Ma'am, thank you very much for this detailed insight. And personally, being in the landscape of ESG auditing, compliance, reporting, training, I tremendously appreciate the efforts that SCCP is putting in Pakistan, and everything else that is happening, for the sustainability, for ESG, and also the regulatory reforms that SCCP is bringing in the context of Pakistan and various different industries. So I, on behalf of the panelists, really appreciate the efforts that SCCP is putting in. And thank you very much once again for, giving us, sort of in-depth background and knowledge about what the SCCP is doing. Thank you. On that, I will now move on to the panelists. We will open the panel discussion. But before we open the panel discussion, I will hand the baton over to panelists for approximately about 5 minutes each. And in those 5 minutes, I would like the panelists to come in and shed some light on their thoughts about, the regulation and the call to action for corporates in Pakistan, which is the topic of this webinar. So on that, I will request Mr. Mamoosh Khwaja, who is Managing Director for ILM Net in Pakistan, which is an ESG, which is a sustainability and advocacy company in Pakistan. So, sir, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Usman, and assalamu alaikum to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and speaking to a very focused audience on this very important topic. I think Musarat has, set the stage quite well and very, very broadly in terms of covering various aspects to this whole issue, not only just where regulation stands, but also in terms of, more importantly, why it's necessary. So I think there are some very good reasons already spelled out. Perhaps I could speak a little bit more about, some of the early barriers and issues that corporates are facing in terms of where we stand today, and where between advocacy and regulation, there is of course this big space where corporates start to move towards ESG integration. So that's where are they, and in terms of what challenges they're facing. So I would say we are given, aside of the factor that regulation is out now, I think the biggest issue, of course, has been over the past couple of years in terms of convincing the corporates on the need for ESG practices and ESG integration. And despite the fact that we have a lot of good reasons on paper in terms of why it's required, it's as we've already seen the good reasons. I think the biggest challenge that we have faced is that we had been lacking evidence, a lot of evidence to show corporates that it really is, a business driver or a revenue driver or a cost saving effort, etc., etc. So really, the economics of the situation has been the key, and as you can well imagine, that businesses will naturally move towards an initiative like this when they clearly see the economics of the initiative, and or there's of course, in absence of the economic reasons, there is of course the responsibility angle, which of course is what most companies have already adopted. But responsibility then is a very sort of a loose statement, and it does not really push you towards the desired objectives. But when it comes to economics, then you can link financial objectives to financial benefits, or let's say returns, etc., etc. So that's I think the issue, and we perhaps are looking for more local data, We're looking for more case studies. We're looking for more clarity in terms of cost savings, more clarity in terms of opportunities, revenue gaining opportunities. Wherever we have struck that chord, we have seen movement happening quite fast. So, for example, if there was either a risk or an opportunity in terms of financial terms, we've seen the movement happen. Specifically, the export businesses, textile sector, for example, we've seen that movement happening already without really asking for it. It was sort of didn't have to be regulated as such in such terms, but it was, of course, demanded by the customers, and the movement happened quite rapidly. When it comes to the multinationals, of course, also because they are driven by international targets and international commitments, there is, of course, a cascading effect down to local subsidiaries as well. So that's where it's already moved well. In between, there is, of course, our local corporate sector, large corporate sector. And I think where they've seen the economics, for example, the benefit of moving to green energy, there has been a natural and a natural evolution towards things like that, and they have really moved towards that in a dramatic fashion. So, in fact, it's gone a little bit more than what probably was required or was anticipated. I think there are more economic cases that have to be pushed through where these transitions have to come in, and that's what I'm once again repeating. The other issue is that there are, of course, a handful of companies who are convinced either by economics or by natural reasons or scientific, of course, explanations, and of course regulation. There comes the issue of how to do this, right? So how do we go about this? And I think this is also key because despite the fact that we now have certain standards that we can look at, there is a certain method to this integration process, and that method is not very well known or not very well understood. Ideally, we would like that ESG is linked or integrated in corporate strategy, in company strategy. That's the first prize, as I always say. The first prize is if you can have ESG linked to your corporate strategy or company business strategy, then you're really doing it in the purest of forms, the best form. The second prize for me is that okay, you can have a company strategy, but you need to still have a sustainability strategy or an ESG strategy. And a lot of people are comfortable doing that. That okay, this is what we do as for business, and here is a sustainability strategy, and we are going to do a certain handful of things on that platform and deliver something. So that is second prize because at least you are moving on certain sustainability initiatives, but it's not top of your top agenda. Maybe it's agenda number 5, 6, or 7 in your company. Okay, that's still better than the third level, where basically we have those companies who don't have a sustainability strategy, and they're going about things business as usual. They're just carrying on with the businesses as they are. So that is the majority and the large chunk, but of course over time that's going to shift. I think through regulation we've been able to move couple of hundred companies already into the second tier. Over the coming period, I would really like to see that more and more companies get into the first tier where they really take it to the corporate strategy.
Definitely, Mahmood. Thank you very much for your insight, for these, and shedding some light on, how we are progressing. I will now move to Ms. Aisha Aziz, who is Group Manager Sustainability for Packages Limited, based in Lahore. And again, Ma'am Aisha, I would request you to shed some light on the regulations and call to action for corporates in Pakistan, and also share some thought and experience as to how Packages is implementing ESG within your remit. So, ma'am, over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for giving us a chance to share our story. So before I speak on the regulations, because I'm new to this, but I would just want to shed some light on why it's still important, or even more important now. Because looking at Pakistan as a country, and if we keep ESG in context, we are navigating across several challenges. We are the most vulnerable on climate change, air pollution, resource depletion, water scarcity. When you talk about social issues, we're still performing poorly on the gender parity index globally. Health and safety is an issue. We hear about accidents every now and then. Our youth, I mean, we're one of the largest in the world where, the largest brain drain is happening. And we have a very young population, but they lack more than 75% of the youth that we have, they lack employability skills. And the ones that do have those skills are leaving Pakistan at an alarming rate. Um, Perception of the country still improving a little bit, but still, there's a lot of, the image of the country is on the corruption and all of those things are still there. And if we continue like this, there is going to be a huge GDP loss. And we will continue to, the business as usual scenario is not going to work for us. So, I mean, if we talk about what packages did, I believe that all companies, in one way or the other, have some sort of ESG practices within their operations, most of them, in one way or the other, because I'm a true believer that it makes perfect business sense. If you're saving electricity, if you're saving resources, you're saving money as well. So these practices are there. I think the regulations have helped us tremendously with putting up, those practices into place where they belong. So I think the easiest thing for any company which is starting just now is to map what they have within the organization, what they're doing against the regulations or the guidelines that have been provided by SCCP, and see what they can do. And I totally agree with Memosh that, you need to have a strategy. The best thing is to have the same strategy, because you can't have two strategies for one business. So the ESG or sustainability strategy has to be aligned with the business strategy. It has to be part of the operations. Sustainability has to be a part of everything everyone does every day. So if it's not the case, then we may be able to report, publish a very nice looking report, but that would be lacking soul. It would just be a very nice magazine with, nothing to carry the weight of. So what we did a few years ago, that, we're lucky to have founders who believe in sustainability much before the terms of ESG were coined. So we had renewable energy and resource efficiency, and all those things were there. We had huge investments like renewable energy, biomass boilers, and recycling of wheat straw, and many other things like that. So when I think about 2-3 years ago, the term ESG was being used a lot. And we were also looking at how the global regulations were shaping up, and we work with most biggest global brands. So we keep an eye on what they have in their commitments as well. So that kind of made us think that we need to reshape or rebrand our own strategy. And we looked at what we have. We looked at the SCCP guidelines. We looked at the different standards, GRI, the most commonly available one. And we mapped all the initiatives that were there within the organization. We are a large group of about 15 businesses of diverse nature. So we have a manufacturing setup, we have financial services, we have retail. So all businesses are different in nature from one the other. And all of them were at different stages of sustainability. Some just beginners, and some like Bullisha, they were at a very advanced stage. So, it was a bit of a challenge. But we were really, really happy to see that we did have most of things in place. So the strategy, and we took it to the board, and the board approved it. And since then, we've been working on engaging all our businesses and bringing them up to one level. We've recently published our 7th annual report, and I see that each year we've been consistent. That's very important, that be consistent. Start with whatever you have and then build on that. And I think each report that we've published over the years has been better than the previous one, but still it's a long way to go. What I feel when I look at the regulations in Pakistan, I do sometimes feel that there's a lot of disparity between the companies and the businesses that are operating here. And, it might be a bit difficult to, have them on board at this time. So, it's interesting to see how, next year, everyone will be publishing reports on S1 and S2. But still, some work done is better than nothing at all. I
Aisha,
hope
thank
I
you.
was able to answer your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much on that, and thank you for shedding light on how packages is working in the ESG and what stance they have towards sustainability. So thank you very much for that. I hope the listeners have found this really interesting. Now I will move to Mr. Kashif Ali, who is the Executive Director of Transparency International. Sir, welcome to this session. I would like you to shed some light again on this topic that we are discussing about regulations and call to action for corporates in Pakistan. And how do you see, because the role that Transparency International is playing in Pakistan, how do you see ESG evolving in the last 2 to 3 years and where it is heading, especially with the role SCCP and stock exchange and other industries are playing in ESG?
Thank you, Usman Saab. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, on behalf of Transparency International Pakistan, thank you very much for taking out the time to join us for this discussion today, and also extremely grateful for all the speakers to take out some time from their busy schedules. Now, at Transparency International, one of our flagship work is around business integrity, where we publish this annual Transparency in Corporate Reporting Assessment study on the business sector in the country. And this is a tool that is used by Transparency International in a lot of other territories and countries as well. Now, just to give you a quick idea in terms of when we say how the TI looks at the level of transparency when it comes to ESG disclosures. So one of the things that we do through the track assessment is to look at by assessing and ranking major companies in Pakistan according to their level of transparency in the disclosure practices of key areas, which are now part of the ESG. And these key areas, they revolve around governance, such as reporting on anti-corruption, reporting on gender non-discrimination, human rights, due diligence processes, corporate social responsibility, and other key areas. The latest, and just to give you some data, which will show, I think, in terms of how the TI views the level of these disclosure practices. The last assessment that we published was in February this year. And as per that assessment, the overall compliance of transparency in corporate reporting stood at 72.3%, which is a moderate transparency as per the methodology. And one of the areas that we had looked in the last report was around to see if the companies are complying with the SSCP's guidelines on ESGs. And I think what we found through this assessment was that out of the 69 companies which were assessed on the track assessment, only 34 companies they disclosed data on the ESG as required by the SSCP. Now, when we talk about the the ESG compliance, I think our earlier speakers have highlighted in detail in terms of how this is becoming increasing requirement with the SCCP and the State Bank of Pakistan and the PSX introducing structured frameworks for reporting, and particularly from July 1 this year, this has become a mandatory requirement on the companies. And I wouldn't go because that would be a repetition to just talk about the more regulatory landscape. Ms. Musarrat and Mahmood Saab has already talked in more detail about it. But I think the key point that I want to make is what the earlier speakers have also said, is that what we need when it comes to the ESG reporting is that it should not only be seen as a regulatory pressure. it needs to be seen as a business necessity, because what I think the conversation really is now that a lot of global investors are prioritizing businesses that have clear ESG commitments. And obviously, I mean, when you're talking about the business sector, that the companies that have ESG considerations in place, they have, they build investor confidence, regulatory awareness, and also the long-term business resilience more effectively. And in this case, I think there are two important points that I want to make in terms of how we see the gaps within the current reporting frameworks. Now, as I said, from the July this year onwards, the ESG reporting aligned with the IFRS S1 and S2, it has become mandatory for the listed companies. What we feel from the TI is that there's a need to focus more on the key areas which are covered under the E, S, and G of different components. So, for example, if you look at the environment component, it includes reporting on the GHG emissions. It includes reporting on the energy, the water consumption, the waste management. Similarly, when we look at the social side, there are many important metrics such as workforce diversity, how the companies are, upholding their commitment to occupational safety, community impact. And similarly, I think in governance, we've also seen a lot of key metrics, how they evolved, such as anti-corruption policies and risk management and ethical business practices. And there, I think one of the key areas that we have identified from the reporting point of view. So if you take the governance component as part of the ESG, the track assessment that we released in February this year, it revealed that the average score of anti-corruption reporting was merely 47.28% among the top 70 listed companies in Pakistan. And then this indicates a very limited attention to reporting when it comes to anti-corruption measures and other key governance metrics. At TI, we believe that there is an urgent need for significant reporting when it comes to governance metrics within the ESG guidelines. And secondly, I think there is also when it comes to the gaps in the reporting, the important area is also the social side, the S of ESG. And there, I think the way the regulatory landscape has evolved in terms of requirement to report on the gender, non-discrimination, harassment, the forced child labor, grievance mechanisms, human rights due diligence. These are all key indicators within the social metrics. But I think the evidence shows that a lot of companies are not reporting on these indicators. And there, how can we, create more awareness and sensitize at the highest, leadership level within the companies is a key point, I think, to bridge this gap. So I think I'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kashif Saab, for that insight. We really appreciate, your contribution as an individual and also for Transparency International. That is, working with various different organizations and regulators to bring ESG to sort of similar level in Pakistan where it is for the rest of the world. I would also take this opportunity to highlight a report that Transparency International has published earlier this year, in which I personally found very interesting. In which they have published or listed 60 businesses in Pakistan that are complying with ESG at various different levels. So what I would also request Transparency International team to share that report with people who have attended and participants who have registered. It's a really interesting read about what various different businesses are doing. So thank you very much for that, Kashif Saab. With that, I will open the floor for our panel discussion. And in the panel discussion, we have Mamoosh Khwaja Saab, Aisha Aziz Saiba, and Kashif Sahab. So with that, I will start the questions, and then we will, sort of look at, opening the floor for Q&A session. So Mahmood Saab, coming to you first, with your experience and expertise, what are the main challenges do you think that Pakistan is facing, in embedding ESG principles into the core business strategy? So what are the issues that they are facing, and so on? And just to sort of add in there that, for the Q&A, each participant has about 3 to 4 minutes, and I will remind you once you get to that time.
Right. Thank you, Usman Saab. I think we've spoken quite a bit about some part of this challenge that corporates have in terms of integrating ESG into their strategy, and I mentioned strategy in terms of where they how they slice it within strategy. Let me speak a little bit more about the companies who have actually kicked off the journey, who are doing it in some form or the other. That's where I think the operational issues are still relevant. One issue is, of course, that of competence. I think that's just we just don't have enough people out there as yet who don't understand how this process needs to be undertaken, and also in terms of how this has to be executed in different forms. I think in execution we have it. Most companies would have, of course, the operations people or technical people. We have HR people, so most people are available. But I think the orientation towards sustainability within their function needs to be enhanced, so that each of these functions can start to perform not only their functional roles, but also functional sustainability roles. So that's what each organization needs to do. Of course, there needs to be an overarching guidance, because the ESG integration process is a process of multiple steps. There is, understanding, prioritizing, target setting, and then, of course, risk management, and then finally comes the reporting issue, which is right at the end. So there are so many steps, so many key processes that companies have to understand as to how to go about this. I would say also, when it comes to execution, there is, like I mentioned earlier, the evidence part, the data collection is still an issue. How do we bring this data forward in a meaningful fashion that makes sense, and as the regulator requires, or as the capital markets require? There is, of course, some standard sort of form of KPIs that have been set up, but how do you get there? Where is this data available? Is it? I think the where question is also very important, because the control that organizations have over their supply chains is of course a very big challenge also, because at some stage we are going to be asking corporates to report data on behalf of their supply chains, and while it's still possible, or there are still resources available to implement data that are directly coming out of your own factories or your own head offices, but the ultimate challenge is to really capture your whole supply chain. And as you can imagine, the Pakistan supply chains are fairly informal in most sectors, and therefore it's a real challenge to get that sorted and prioritized and reported by the large companies. I also say that a lot of ESG action is frankly beyond the scope of your company scope as well in Pakistan, because there's so many infrastructural issues that have to be addressed, and therefore public-private partnerships and pure public initiatives, multilateral initiatives have to pave the way for companies to make a meaningful difference in terms of the change. For example, the grid, the electricity. I mean, if you can, if you were simply to, if you don't change the source of energy towards renewable, then obviously your hands are tied in terms of what difference you can make. So that's just an example. So there are a lot of infrastructure policy related topics that have to come into play as well for companies to make that number difference, quantifiable difference. And that's what we want. I think the main thing is we want companies to make that quantifiable difference, because qualitatively we can publish nice reports, as I just said, we can make them look glorified, but really the numbers have to start adding up towards country objectives. And that's where I think we'll be still struggling 1 year down the road.
Thank you very much, Musab. That leads me on to Ms. Aisha, in terms of, what the Packages Group, is doing. Obviously, I follow your LinkedIn personally very closely, and what the Packages is doing in the industry itself in terms of sustainability and ESG. And your role as the group sustainability manager, what do you think are the pressing issues in terms of regulatory gaps in Pakistan? Although like I mentioned earlier on, and Madam Musarraf explained as well, that SCCP is doing quite a bit. So, but even then, what do you think if there are any gaps there, in terms of which standard to follow? SASB or IFRS or GRI and so on and so forth. So if you could shed some light on that, please.
Yeah. So like I said, the regulation in itself, it helped us shape our strategy as well. But the biggest challenge is that, all the companies and all the businesses that are operating in Pakistan, they're not at the same level. So, I think some sort of hand holding for beginners needs to be there. So these webinars and, these conferences and training sessions, these help a lot. But there would be still businesses who are struggling. And I mean, I've seen some reports this year which just have like 15 pages or something, and just, a narrative on how good they are. But, the biggest challenge will come, when, you need to report the bad numbers. I've seen some really good reports, global reports, when, they've shared the KPIs that were not met, and why they were not met, and how they're going to, work on that in the next few years. So that kind of, courage, and also the support, because, over here, the element of, it's still, I think, the confidence that needs to be there for any business to, be that bold. That's something I think very interesting to see. And as with any regulations and certifications, there is a mushroom growth of unqualified or semi-qualified consultants everywhere. Like Mehmood just mentioned, that, the skill set is not really there. Wherever I go, I meet so many sustainability experts, and when you look at their profiles, and you'd be amazed, but when you speak to them, you find out that, they've hardly have any exposure of what they claim to be. So that's a bit of a dangerous thing, because companies who are just starting out, they have that risk of falling into the wrong hands, for the lack of better words. Yeah. So I think what I see is that a lot of companies are just starting out. There are things which they are doing already, which could be there, but it's a journey. And without knowing where do you want to go in the next few years, or 10 years, or 20 years, it would be a bit of a challenge over there. Another thing I think is, when we go towards assurance of reporting and all of that. So, a lot of, I mean, there would be risk of false reporting. So, that's something, I don't know how we will be looking into that. So, I think this probably would be there. Data, that's something, when you talk about ESG, it's just not a lot of nice words, but it has to make sense in numbers as well. So availability of data, that's a very big challenge, especially when you talk about environmental data. It's very difficult to have those kinds of numbers available, even if they are. For large companies like us, and even for smaller companies, I think the environmental data and the capability to work on that data, that's I think something that needs to be looked into as well.
Thank you very much, Aisha, for that. You have raised some key points in terms of skill sets, and in terms of, what, like you rightly said, once you look at the social media and, especially LinkedIn, there are so many people that you would find who have all of a sudden become ESG or sustainability experts, but once you sit down and have a conversation with them, their knowledge and expertise are not there. Second important point that you have raised is about the the quality of the reports, you see. So yes, it's all glitz and glamour, so to speak, within the reports. But once you sit down and analyze that data within, and the quality of that data, that is sometimes questionable. So you're absolutely right, and again, I think, what the SCCP is trying to do is quite commendable in relation to, spreading knowledge, awareness, and reforming the regulations, in terms of ESG. And I'm sure, in the larger scheme of things, SCCP has got some plans in terms of, regularizing, the ESG experts and sustainability experts as well. So thank you very much for that. With that, I will move to Kashif Saab. Kashif Saab, you are doing an important role, performing an important role, you and your organization, in terms of, the accountability and transparency. So how do you see that, the level of transparency is available, in Pakistan in terms of ESG disclosures throughout Pakistan? So, you, like I mentioned earlier on, you have recently published, Transparency International has recently published that report. So how do you see that as, in terms of the issues that you are facing, and, how true that, reflection of, that reporting is throughout Pakistan?
Thank you, Osman Saab. And just to add, I think in terms of the level of transparency, so as I highlighted, so when we talk about the regulatory landscape, it is very clear that it has evolved a lot. I think the current regulatory frameworks that we have are robust enough. When it comes to gaps, how do we bridge those gaps, and what do the evidence from the companies reporting suggest? And I share that some of the data that would point to that. And then there, I think to your question, I think the point that I would like to make is on the follow-up. What I was saying earlier is the role of the non-corporates as well when it comes to the ESG reporting. And there, I think it's not only the SCCP, the State Bank, and the PSX and the corporates, but there is also an important role of the civil society organizations, the non-profit organizations, in terms of how do we strengthen the ESG governance, through evidence generation, through advocacy. And there are particularly there are two things that the academia and the think tanks and the civil society has done in terms of the evolution of this landscape. And I think the biggest is in terms of the agenda setting. We have seen, from the earlier speakers as well, that it is very clear that the corporate governance and the ESG governance landscape has evolved a lot in Pakistan. And this has evolved because of the push from different stakeholders. And these are also the stakeholders, which are largely also the non-profits, the non-corporates, civil society, experts, and academia. But the other challenge I think here, when we talk about the level of transparency, is also we need to understand and emphasize that many of the E, S, and G, metrics that we talk about are still voluntary compliance in Pakistan. So, for example, if you take the governance metrics, many of the indicators in the Ministry of Human Rights National Action Plan for the businesses for human rights are the voluntary compliances. So how do we, I think, push for this policy and legislative influence? Is one of the key area where the organizations like TI and think tanks can play an important role in terms of setting this agenda for changing a landscape. And secondly, I think is what you said about the accountability is a role as a watchdog, which I think as TI also we look at ourselves when we engage with the business integrity side is more of a watchdog role. That how can we through research, assessments, evidence generation, create some data on the ESG compliances that hold firms and also the regulators accountable in terms of what are the gaps, what are some of the key areas in terms of the gaps. And there, I think there are very important organizations which are doing some excellent work, including the think tanks in this area. So these are, I think, that's also because what Ms. Aisha was also earlier saying, everything then trickles down to the numbers and the data, and how do we generate this data by looking at the top companies reporting is also one of the important advocacy points, which at TI I think we do it through our annual reporting every year.
Thank you, Kashif Saab. You have raised a very good point in terms of the role of academia, and also, that some of this reporting is voluntary in Pakistan. So I'm sure, the regulators are working on this in terms of, making it mandatory and so on and so forth. So that brings me to Mahmood Saab, you in terms of, what Kashif Saab was mentioning about, the issues that we face in Pakistan. So what do you feel that, the corporate leaders in Pakistan can better align their sustainability goals with what, the global ESG framework is sort of suggesting? So how do you see that, in the coming years?
Yeah, thanks. So I think we've already seen the alignment with international standards or local standards is key because of the whole issue of capital and the economics issue. Whether you want to have better cost of capital, or whether you want to have better investment funding, or if you want to have simply better efficient returns for your business, you will need to align yourself to certain standards. This I think earlier Busarat had made this point, and I will further elaborate on this by suggesting that I think you also wanted to know, or you asked a question about whether there's too much regulation or whether there's too much confusion around this regulation. So I think it's been simplified quite a bit. Of course, 3 years ago, if you had asked, one would say, "Oh, there is so many standards to look at, reporting standards." So now there is, of course, the ISSB S1 S2 standard, which is what Pakistan has taken up, and that is the one that is most global in nature in terms of most countries are following the same standard, and that is the one that is going to bring in that comparability, transparency and comparability that we had earlier talked about. Kashif and Surat has spoken about this. So ISSB, for following that standard, it allows you to be linked to a bigger global capital marketplace, right? And definitely the Pakistan's own stock exchange and also the global marketplace. You will get in the queue for being valued better. Your stock is likely to get valued better or valued if you are following the same consistent pattern of reporting, and everybody can see and draw your results, etc. So that's why it's important to do that. To get that better capital value out of your stock. Secondly, the green taxonomy is out there. People are also asking the question about that document as to where is that going to lead to. So of course, the plans should be now coming forward that green taxonomy will allow the financial sector to determine which companies or which corporates or which processes or initiatives that you have are falling in green and which are not falling in green or are red or whatever. So that will allow better, again, cost of capital to flow. So green financing will be channeled through that, and hopefully there will be schemes for the green businesses. So you're also accessing better green.
I'm 49 number pe hain. I'm 49
That's
number
the second thing. The third thing I would highlight is, of course, target setting. So I think target setting is one area where companies are not yet clear in Pakistan also as to what should be their targets, especially when it comes to climate. The first topic of the year is climate. And there the global standard is the SBTI, the Science-Based Targets Initiative. And it's a tough one to follow. And I think we haven't really asked companies to follow that. But if I think Pakistani top corporates are to follow the SBTI standard of target setting, then again global readability becomes easier. Most companies would know that your mission is meaningful, it has credibility, it has commitment, and then foreign markets can start to follow you much better. Because in the absence of good target setting or credible target setting, we will lack that issue in terms of where are we going with our actions. So I think SBTI is another one that companies can look at and should be aligned to if your resources allow. And the last bit is, of course, a side addendum to the whole story is this whole EU story where we have the European Union businesses, export, etc., where they have a slightly different reporting requirement. And if you are gunning for EU exports, or if you're already into EU exports, then you will have to align yourself to the European reporting standards, which are a little bit, different from, well, they're now being aligned, but they're actually a separate set of activities, more detailed activities that
10
you have
seconds,
to,
please, 10 seconds.
So that's an additional bit that I'd say you can follow and secure your exports accordingly. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Musa. Very important point you have raised about exports, with the situation that we are in terms of exports and, the Pak rupee and in comparison to dollar. So I'm no financial expert, but, I'm sure, the authorities will look at that. Now, I would like to open the floor to the participants, whereby, we can participants can ask questions to the panelists. So we will have 10 minutes, and if there are questions, please raise hands, and we will come to you for your participation. So the floor is open now to the participants, and if you have questions, please raise hands, and we will come to you. Okay, so the first question that we have here is from Ajmal Sahab, who is saying, when you say false reporting, are you not blaming bodies of playing wrong? So, Madam Musarrat, are you able to take this question? Kashif Sahab?
I think this question has already been answered by in the chat box by Aisha, so that's taken care of. If you're reading from the chat box, that is.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Any other questions from any other participants?
I think there's one more comment from Mr. Ikram in the chat box.
Okay, sorry, it's being updated now. I've just seen that question and the subsequent answer by Aisha. Okay, so yes, Ikram Saab is asking, there are awareness training issues as well. No educational institution is informing students about ESG and SDGs. Tokenism is at its peak. Regulated industry and educational institutions need to do real work. Transparency has been and would be an issue, action is required even about those who are not even bothered about ESG. So Ikram sir, thank you very much for this question, a very thought-provoking question. So before I pass this on to the panelists, I would like to add in here that as part of ESG Nexus, we are working very closely with Rifa University, Rifa Islamic University, and their Islamabad campus, whereby we are looking at adding ESG in their current curriculum. So we are working very closely with the professors and the administrative team and so on and so forth. So, in terms of educational institutes, there is an effort being made on there. So Kashif Saab, can I direct this question to you, please?
I would suggest Mehmood Saab take this, because I know he has done a lot of work around this, including in his current capacity for the startups and techs.
Yeah. So just like yourself, Usman Saab, I think there are at least 3 universities that I am aware of that I've spoken to, and these are obviously reputable universities also, who are already offering or are about to offer ESG or sustainability programming, especially for their master's level students. I think at an undergraduate level, probably it can be a little bit of a challenge. You have to remain at a functional level when it comes to undergraduate studies. But if you really want to impart ESG education, then it has to be at a more higher level, at a master's level, or at executive education level. So that's where I think most universities are looking at it, and it is. I think by 6 months' time, you will see that at least 3-4 universities are up and running with something similar, and that's how I see it. Yeah. So
thank you, Mahmood Saab. I'll go to the next question. The next question is about from Ramiz Sahab, who is saying, don't you think there should be further guidelines and trainings based on the sectors which are more prone in Pakistan impacting ESG? So before I hand that over to the panelists, I would like to add in there that there are regular training sessions that are being taken place in Pakistan. ESG Nexus is holding a training session in Lahore, Pearl Continental, on 17th and 18th of September. Previously, we've held sessions in Karachi and Lahore. I know there are other, businesses, training institutes in Pakistan that are offering that as well. So, Ms. Aisha, would you like to take this question?
Please repeat, which one is this?
So the question is about, having further guidelines and training based on sectors that are more prone in Pakistan impacting ESG.
Definitely, I think because it's something still very new. And I've, I think, said the same thing earlier as well, that there's a lot of room for us to learn. So yes, guidelines and trainings in sector specific, definitely, because no one industry is the same, similar to the other. Because I just saw another question in the chat box about how do we set ESG KPIs that align with an e-commerce business model. So the guidelines may not really speak directly to online businesses. So yes, further guidelines and sector-based trainings and all, they could help as well.
And I would just also add to this that in absence of local guidelines, there is international expertise available in this. So if you can if you go to SASB, of course, it is by sector. So you can get your metrics by sector from SASB. I think also SBTI also has sector-wise guidelines on targets by sector setting. So there are international references available, which are a good starting point to at least educate oneself.
Thank you. Kashif Saab, one question is for you by Kishwar Mehboob. And the question is, TI assessment, if disclosure is not provided by the organization, but the organization is complied with the requirements internally. Why in TI assessment it can be marked as compliant for the requirement, and why a disclosure is mandatory for this?
No, thank you for this question. I think the methodology of the track assessment. So what we are looking at it is just the disclosure of information, whether a particular, the metrics of ESG and different indicators, which obviously come from different regulations that we have in place. So if you look at the last assessment, so we looked at the SSCP Code of Conduct, Corporate Governance, PSX, Ministry of Human Rights Action Plan. So this doesn't necessarily mean that if a company necessarily having a lower score on the TI assessment report means that the company does not have policies in place. It's just that those policies are not visible. It's just that those policies are not being reported. So what we are doing through this assessment is focusing more on the disclosure practices. And in a lot of cases, I think we did receive this query from a lot of companies that these policies are in place. So what we are emphasizing that what the disclosure practice requires, also the transparency, is that these policies should be made publicly available as part of the the annual reports, as part of the website or other public forums where the policies are visible. And most of the I think the indicators that you would see in the track assessment, they are the mandatory compliances. So we are not looking at the voluntary side of it. We're looking at what is required for the public listed companies as per the current regulations which are in place.
Thank you, Kashif Sahab. With that, we'll move on to the last question. Ma'am Aisha, that question is directed to you. And the question is regarding skill sets and the quality of data. Many consultancies and industries often don't give opportunities to beginners. My question is, when no one gives beginners a chance, how can we prove our authenticity and skills? How can refreshers enter the professional market under these conditions? So before Ma'am Aisha answers this question, I, on behalf of ESG Nexus, is willing to take, we are actively working in Pakistan over certain ESG reporting and ESG auditing projects. If there are any refreshers, especially Abdullah Sahab, you have mentioned this question. We are happy to take you on. Obviously, if you have the right skill set and expertise, we'll, regardless of what experience you have, we are happy to take them on. We are actively working on various different projects. So that is on behalf of ESG Nexus, I'm offering to all the participants who are willing to join. So Ma'am Aisha, over to you.
So interesting question, but I think if I speak from where I am representing packages, and we're really proud of this, that we take freshers, and in our corporate sustainability teams, I think 80% of the people are working for the first time. So it's difficult to find sustainability professionals in the market who are already trained. But we are on the other side of that we train people and other companies poach them. So, it's a quite of a situation for us. But I think many big industries, big companies, they do take, a batch of fresh MTOs every year. And I think that doesn't require any prior skill set or, experience. So those opportunities are there. And I was just, the earlier question about ESG education and all, and linked to that, we've just onboarded a fresh batch of MTOs. And day before yesterday, I was just having a discussion with them, and I was really pleasantly surprised at the awareness of all those young people on ESG, sustainability, and carbon markets. And these, MTOs are from very different universities from all over Pakistan. So it means that, the desire to learn is there. They are aware, they have access to information, and, they have this kind of a mindset as well. So it's really important that it is part of the education. But I think there are many like Memosh mentioned, there are many online platforms where they can learn. So I see a lot of young people enrolling themselves into online courses and finding opportunities to learn. So having said that, it cannot replace having something a part of the curriculum. So I mean, we still have a long way to go, but still, I think I'm pleasantly surprised when I speak to young people who are in the market right now.
Thank you, Ma'am Aisha. Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, we interact with a lot of youngsters, especially in the GCC market. There is a lot of emphasis and focus on, sustainability and ESG compliance, especially in UAE, Bahrain, Qatar. So when we speak to youngsters, there is a lot of fresh talent and also knowledge and expertise available there. Kuratalan, your question about experienced people, yes, of course. There is no discrimination about experienced or fresh people. I think there is plenty of work out there, and if you are in the right, you have the right skill set, businesses will take you on board. So thank you very much for that question and answer session. I will, we will close this session about question and answers here. We have made notes of the questions that have been asked. Those of the questions that haven't been answered, we will send an email as a recap, and respond to those. Now I will pass the baton over to Ms. Raima Mahmood, who is part of the Transparency International team, who will summarize the key points and for the closing remarks. Over to you, Ma'am Raima.
Thank you so much, Mr. Osman, for starting today's discussion so smoothly. A big thank you to our keynote speaker, Ms. Musarrat Jabin, and all the panelists, Mr. Mahmood, Ms. Aisha, Kashif, for giving us their perspectives. And of course, thanks to everyone who has joined today. As we wrap up, let's take a moment to look back at some key takeaways. As Mr. Mahmood reminded us that sustainability and strategy need to be strong, forward looking, and based on the solid data. As Ms. Aisha also pointed out, that the importance of clear regulations to make ESG reporting meaningful and credible. Mr. Kashif talked about the current state of ESG data disclosure in Pakistan and also highlighted the role of civil society independent actors as a watchdog, showing how tools like Transparency International Pakistan's tracking report can help hold companies accountable. And as Ms. Musarrat tied it all together by stressing why transparency in ESG compliance matters and making sure reporting is accurate, verifiable, and backed up by enforcement. So while also recognizing progress that SSCP and other regulatory bodies had made so far, one thing is clear from today's discussion: progress on ESG in Pakistan depends on standardized reporting, clear regulations, and real collaboration between business, regulators, investors, and civil society. So none of these alone will get us there, but together they can create real impact. I also want to acknowledge all of you here today. Your questions, comments, and energy really made the conversation richer. It's this kind of engagement that turns the discussion into action. So thank you for being part of this session, and let's take what we have learned today and use it on our work and in our organizations and our communities. Thank you, Usman Saab.
Thank you, Ma'am Raima, for summarizing the key points. Now I will move to Ma'am Shahana Kokab, who is part of the Board of Governors for Transparency International Pakistan, who will, for vote of thanks. Ma'am Shahana Kokab, over to you.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. It was a pleasure to be a part of this webinar today, and I'm so happy to listen to such good talks about all our participants. Thank you very much. I'm deeply thankful for taking out time for today's webinar, and we hope that we have come to a certain point and information at this point. And I would also like to thank our distinguished speakers for sharing their expertise and forward-looking perspectives on ESG, corporate governance and sustainable business practices. Now, you have all helped us to better understand our regulatory procedures and developments. And we hope that with this, we will be able to take this topic further. Now, today's dialogue is aligning global ESG standards and strengthening internal governance systems and ensuring transparency. Transparency is a most important part in this, and integrity and ethical practices. So achieving this requires a collective commitment from regulators and businesses and investors and the civil society. Thank you once again from my side, and hope that we will meet again for another webinar and more work in this direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, Shahana Kokab, for that brief note. On that, we would bring this session to a close. Thank you very much for all the participants who joined this session for this webinar. For all the individuals who have asked questions, for all the panelists, Musarrat Saiba from SCCP, Mahmood Khwaja Saab, Aisha Aziz from Packages, Kashif Saab from Transparency International, and Raima for your closing remarks. So thank you all. A few key points to take away from this session. ESG is still in its infancy in Pakistan, but there is a lot of work that is happening. I mean, on the other side of the table where I am sitting, personally, I can tell you there is a lot of work that is happening. We recently visited a textile unit in Pakistan, and honestly, once we entered that facility, it was on a different level altogether, ESG compliant, and it was absolutely phenomenal. So there is a lot of work that is happening, and it's not just the bigger industrial units or bigger clients or bigger financial institutes who are doing it. It's happening on the smaller scale as well. The whole idea is that, we all work together, we all work collectively, and, within 5 to 6 years, we will see, some tangible results. And I always, sort of refer to ISO standard. When back in late 90s and early 2000s, ISO standard was coming into Pakistan, everyone, was holding their heads as to what, this ISO standard is and how we are going to comply and so on and so forth, but if you take about 27 years later, ISO is embedded, into every single almost organization. And it is important and imperative for us to understand that, ESG is a cycle, So if I am working with a business in US, and if that US business in US is ESG compliant, they would expect me in Pakistan, whether I'm textile or manufacturing or whatever I'm doing, they would expect me to be ESG compliant as well. So it's a chained, sort of reaction, snowball effect, and so on and so forth. So with that, I would thank you all again. Thank you all the participants. It was very good and engaging discussion. Thank you to ESG Nexus and Transparency International for organizing this. And this is a series of webinars which will continue, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much, and Allah Hafiz. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.